Hey cakers and bakers, welcome back to my channel. It's Emily Miller with My Sugar Rush, and today we're going to go over what should be in your cake contract. Now I get this question all the time, and that is because most of us cake decorators are creative minded, and when it comes to creating the business side of your business, a lot of people just don't know what they're doing, and that's okay. So I'm going to explain everything that's in my cake contract that I recommend having in your contract. I think cake contracts are so important because it tells your clients what you expect from them as well as what they should expect from you. So let's go through this together. First section is cake design. This first section explains that cake is a creative art form and it is my interpretation of the agreed upon design, and that I should be allowed to make any changes to the cake design based on structural integrity, stability, and any certain emergencies that may come up while I'm working on the cake. It also explains that although I'll do my best to color match when requested, it is not always that easily achievable because things like modeling chocolate, buttercream, they start off with a yellow tint to them, and it's not always easy to get exact perfect colors. Design changes. So I do allow my clients to make any changes to their cake order up until 2 weeks before the cake is actually due. I explain to my clients that this is when I actually start planning for their cake order. I start buying things, I start prepping for it, maybe looking for the tools that I know I'm going to need, and so I cannot accept any more changes at that point. It also explains that any changes to the cake order, whether it's increasing or decreasing, that can affect the price that we have already agreed upon. So they shouldn't expect the price to stay the same if they make any changes to that order. But I do explain that certain things like changing the flavor on their cake actually doesn't affect the price. I charge the same price for all flavors. Delivery and setup, and this one is important. So in this section, I explain to them that if they want to pick up their wedding cake, once it leaves my house, it is no longer my responsibility, as it shouldn't be. And I do everything in my power to make sure that that cake is going to make it home. I do a lot of structuring in my cakes. Although I do recommend to them that 3 tiers or more, they should probably pay for delivery. Paying for delivery is like paying insurance on their cake. That cake is still in my care until it gets to the venue, so they need to pay a little bit extra for that, and that ensures that the cake will get there intact. And that they need to understand that delivery is based on my availability. If I already have multiple cakes that day, they can't decide last minute, hey, we've decided on delivery after all. Well, okay, great, but I'm gonna deliver it when I'm available. Now you need to explain to them that they need to be careful where they're putting the cake in the venue. Typically, venues already know a good place to put the cake, but sometimes when it's in a home or anything like that, they don't have a set place and they just think, I'll just put this cake out in the sun. No, please explain to your clients that where they put the cake does matter, and once it leaves your care, it is no longer your responsibility if the cake gets damaged. It's pretty obvious they shouldn't put the cake outside or in direct sunlight. They also shouldn't put it next to a fireplace. Yes, that actually has happened to me. They shouldn't put it next to a bar, next to a dance floor, in front of loud speakers. Any of these things, they just need to be aware that that could damage the cake. I have actually had a cake friend of mine who had a wedding cake fall over on her because it was next to loud speakers that made it vibrate and eventually fall over. I have so many other horror stories from over the years of different ways that cakes have been destroyed. Company responsibility. So I do think that your cake contract should tell them what they need to expect from you as well. The contract should protect both parties. So I explain that in the case of an unavoidable situation, such as I get into a car accident on the way to the venue and the cake gets destroyed, that cake is still in my care, it's still my responsibility. And I tell them that in that case, we can discuss a partial refund, or if it's fully destroyed, they don't get a cake at all, we can discuss a full refund. Then I explain to them that in the case that something happens to me far enough in advance where I know that I can't complete the cake order, such as I break my arm the week before and I know that I physically cannot do their cake, that I will do my best to find another cake decorator for them. Now, I like to offer this because I actually network with a lot of local cake decorators, so it's really easy for me to find someone available. And I did tell them that I would do my best to find someone who can do the same quality of work for the same price, and that I can either transfer the money over to the new cake decorator, give them all the information, or they can simply accept a refund. I've had so many brides come to me over the years looking for a last-minute cake decorator because theirs just up and quit on them. And I have spent years networking with other cake decorators, so it's a lot easier for me to find a last-minute replacement versus them bouncing around trying to find someone themselves. Other cake decorators are way more likely to say yes to me last minute than say yes to them last minute. Allergies. So basically, I just like to ask them if they have any major allergens that I should be aware of. Obviously, you can't accommodate everybody in the wedding party, but you should be able to accommodate at least the bride and groom and maybe even immediate family. I typically like to paint on cakes using almond extract. So if I know that they're allergic to almonds, then I can use something like Everclear to paint on their cake. It's just the little things like that that they may not suspect will be in their cake, but it's just nice to go over that and just make sure that you're covered. But I do explain to them that if there are any allergies, there's always the chance for cross-contamination. And if they have an allergy that is too extreme, I highly recommend going to a specialized bakery. Non-edible items. So I just tell them things like, hey, real flowers are going on your cake. Please don't eat the flowers. They're not edible. Also, if there's things like sugar flowers, yes, they're technically edible, but there's wires and things in the flowers. So I just tell them, please don't eat all these things. They're not edible. And it is not my responsibility if someone injures themselves by eating something on the cake that was not meant to be eaten. And I recommend removing any non-edible items before cutting and serving their cake. Deposit. So I explained to them that they are going to sign the contract in person with me right then, but they are not officially booked until they've put down a non-refundable deposit. The deposit is non-refundable because it is meant to book and secure their date so that I set it aside for them and I don't book any other people that day. Once you set aside that date for them, you are turning away other potential clients. And so if they decide to cancel on you, you need to be able to keep some of that money, because especially if it's last minute, there is a chance that you may not be able to fill that spot with another wedding cake. So this section is meant to protect you. And if they're not ready to book right then, I do let them know that my availability is first come, first serve. If someone else comes to me, puts down their deposit, that date is now secured by somebody else. A lot of cake decorators I've seen like to do a 50% deposit and then the other 50% remaining balance is due before their date. Personally, I like to require a smaller deposit. That's just me, and it is based on how much their cake order is. You decide what works for you. Final payment and my cancellation policy. So I remind them that 2 weeks before their wedding is the lockout date for any changes to their order. So this is also when their final payment is due. I let them know that although I'll start sending reminders to them 2 weeks before, if I don't receive payment at 7 days before, I'm not responsible for fulfilling their cake order. In which case I would keep 50% of the payments made at that point, or the non-refundable deposit, whichever amount is greater. For the cancellation, if they cancel the wedding at any point, then I keep their non-refundable deposit, which has already been discussed. If the cancellation is within the 2 weeks before, after the lockout date, then it is too late for me to find another client to fill that date. So that's when I would keep 50% of the payments made or the non-refundable deposit, whichever amount is greater. Because within the 2 weeks before, they should have already paid the full amount. Now, I'm pretty lenient with my clients. If they cancel within 48 hours before, I do tell them that the amount refunded, if any, would be determined by me. And I let them know that 48 hours before, I've already done all the shopping for their cake, all the prep work for their cake. It's already baked, the buttercream is made, the fillings are made. And at that point, I probably have already started stacking their cake, so it is too late for them, and there's a very good chance they won't receive any refund. I take on a lot of cake orders though, so it is pretty easy for me to reuse some of those cake layers even just a week or two later. If you do a lot less cakes, then I recommend extending that 48 hours to maybe a full week before. If they cancel within that week time period, then they probably won't get a refund. And I just let them know that if anything comes up that may change their date, that communication is key. And if they're upfront about any issues that arise, I will do my best to accommodate them. I've been doing cakes for years. I've also worked in an event venue, and things come up. Sometimes a family member gets so extremely sick and they postpone the entire wedding for that one family member. Those are extreme circumstances, and personally, I think that you should be a little bit lenient with customers in situations like that. Another section that is not in my contract that maybe I would recommend adding into yours are cake stand rentals. I do rent out my cake stands, but I've been pretty lucky to get almost all of them back intact without being broken or damaged. A lot of people do charge a rental fee for their cake stands, and I actually do recommend adding that into your contract as well. And letting them know that if the cake stand is returned to you damaged or broken, or it goes completely missing, that you will charge them for that. So that's my cake contract. Let me know if you have any more questions or if there's anything that you think I missed in my contract. I'll drop a link below for you to download a copy of my contract to use as a template for your own contract. And I highly recommend that you go through the contract and make any changes to it that is specific to your business and your needs and what you feel comfortable with. Don't forget to like, but especially do not forget to subscribe to my videos for more delicious content coming your way. And while you're here, why don't you go watch some of these other videos? Bye!